Hey, what's up? It's Iris. Today I'm doing a video on the question of what does it feel like when someone misgenders you? My lover asked me this recently, actually, and it's really interesting because I've not like been really with someone consistently since I've been out as non-binary. So this is like the first time when like someone who I'm with has been like paying attention to my gender in a very like explicit asking questions way. My partners in the past have in fact been aware, because I think it's kind of hard not to see it with me when you know me. But I got asked this question. So what does it feel like when someone misgenders you? My experiences of misgendering are not particularly aggressive. My experiences would be completely different from like a trans woman or a trans man, because generally when people are misgendering me, it's not like to be aggressive. It's usually just them not getting it and not seeing me. Okay, so I want to clarify that what I mean here is that the type of misgendering that I've experienced doesn't have violent intent behind it. Whereas for a lot of trans people, there is an overt violence intended by the person misgendering them. So I've never experienced anything like that in my life, and I want to acknowledge and say like that is an experience that exists. So misgendering can feel completely different when it's clear that there is violence intended in the act of it. So that's why in this video I kind of talk about it like it's not as much of a big deal, when it really is a big deal, and it's still an act of aggression and microaggression when it is directed towards me. I'm not saying it's not an aggressive act, but I am saying that the type I have experienced doesn't have violent intent. Cool. Glad I got to get in here and have a little chat with you guys. So when someone misgenders me, there's just like not really aggression coming from their side, which makes my experiences of misgendering, I think, super different than maybe somebody else's. So as an AFAB non-binary person, this is kind of what's true for me and how I feel when I get misgendered. I'm not a representative of all AFAB non-binary people. I wasn't trying to say that here. I just want to clarify again. So many clarifications here. This is my experience, and I'm AFAB and non-binary for a little bit of context. And I bet there are AFAB non-binary people who have experienced overt, aggressive misgendering. That's just not part of my experience thus far. Is it likely to become part of my experience in the future? Probably. I'm not particularly optimistic. Like, I feel like as I come more into my gender, the more likely it is for people to like be aggressive to me. I think there's a lot more acceptance though for AFAB people when they dress in androgynous styles. I am less likely to get harassed on the street for dressing like very clearly in a masculine way than maybe somebody who was AMAB dressing in a feminine way. These are all things to think about, because I don't want to categorize the experience as one experience, because it's not. I've said that before. It's not one experience. It's so many different experiences. Okay, I'm just gonna get into the fucking video. Shut up, Iris. My initial answer to this question was just like, oh, it kind of like, yuck, but I move on, because generally it's just someone who just doesn't really know or like doesn't get it, and I'm like, I don't care. I don't care. If you don't know, then like there's no way for you to know not to misgender me. But at the same time, it doesn't feel very good now, does it? So the way I explained this the second time around, I thought about more, was like, usually when I'm going about my daily life, I'm not really thinking about my gender unless I'm having like a particularly either dysphoric or euphoric day where I feel like really like in my body and in my gender in that way, or if I'm feeling very out of body, in which case like the whole day kind of sucks, right? When someone misgenders me on a day when I'm just like not really thinking about it, it's sort of like breaking the fourth wall on reality. Like it makes me sort of like, what? Sorry, what? Because I'm not thinking about it, and then somebody kind of like brings it to my attention. It's like seeing the camera when you're watching a movie. That's exactly how I would describe it in most of my experiences. So it's not an aggressive thing, but it is like a like, I kind of wish you hadn't done that. Like, now I'm aware that I'm watching a movie. So that's sort of like the very like general description of what that misgendering feels like for me in my experience. I'm sure everyone's experience of misgendering is going to feel completely different. But if that helps you articulate your experience, then feel free to use that kind of analogy. And I want to talk about sort of like the cases in which I'm misgendered the most. I would say that the people who misgender me the most are cis women who kind of like still perceive me as a woman or sort of group me with them even when like I've kind of said I'm not, and still will kind of say like, oh, we need more women in film to me, at me, as if it's directed to me when I'm not a woman. And I'm sort of like, I mean, yeah, that statement is true, but are you grouping me into that? And then it's sort of this back and forth. Usually I won't say anything because I'm just like, I get what you mean. But this idea, like, you get what I mean, it's like, do I really? Like, do I really get what you mean? Like, yeah, we need more women in film, but you're misgendering me by kind of directing this at me. So I would say that's sort of like the most experience I have with misgendering, is saying like, we need more women in film, we need more women in STEM, and sort of like categorizing me as a woman, saying, oh, we need more powerful women. It's like, yeah, we do. I'm not trying to be a misogynist. Yeah, we do. But don't include me in that group. You know, if you want to say we need more non-men, cool. But I'm not, I don't know how to. And I've noticed like a lot more recently, and sort of, I think this has been true for a long time, my relationships with cis women are severely limited by the fact that a lot of them perceive me as one of them, and sort of like maybe know that I'm non-binary, but will still sort of like say some things that are like, clearly they're not thinking of me that way. Clearly they're still thinking of me as a woman. Sort of, that just doesn't feel very good. And so I'm not friends with a lot of cis women because of that, because I often feel misgendered in context with them. And that could easily be me projecting my own fears of like coming across as a woman, or my own fears of like not belonging. Like, I've talked about this before, how when I'm with a group of women, I just don't feel like one of them. And that's one of the ways that I knew I was not one of them. But because of that, like, a lot of the time it's not super comfortable for me in those spaces, because I feel like I'm constantly getting misgendered. Again, this is my own experience talking about this. I'm really not trying to shit on cis women at all, because we shouldn't be shitting on women. But this is a problem I have noticed. And for that reason, I end up feeling a lot more comfortable and more like myself when I'm around other non-binary people, other trans people, or like men. And I think that one of the reasons why I'm friends with so many men, and why I've been friends with so many men, is because there's no pressure to be one of them when I'm around them. Nobody expects that I am one. No one expects that I'm part of the club, so it doesn't feel like I'm deceiving anyone by being there. Part of this is like totally a personal internal problem of like, I feel like I'm deceiving people. But it's also a very real problem of like, sort of like, girls' night. I don't know how to say, am I allowed to be here? I don't know. It was just something I was thinking about and I wanted to talk about. Trying to think of other contexts in which I'm misgendered. Oh, on the other side, let's talk about getting misgendered as a man, right? Like somebody accidentally calls me sir or something like that. Or it's clear that someone perceives me as a man. That's funny because like, well, I'm not a man. That feels particularly validating. Being perceived as a man, like, it's just like, oh yeah, it's kind of like proves that my androgynous presentation is working and is telling the outside world what's going on in the internal, right? So there's this other side of like being misgendered where it's like, yeah, that's not me, but that kind of makes me feel good that you saw that, you know? And I think this is another experience that a lot of non-binary people have, is like getting misgendered as quote unquote the opposite. It's like, ooh. Really? Sir? Like, at least in my experience, that's like a very much so like, yeah, if like you perceive me as a boy, like thank you. Which is like so kind of ironic. I think it's because you're not being pushed into a box that's been assigned to you since birth when someone misgenders you in that kind of way. I don't know. But that's another side of the coin of like, sometimes it can feel kind of good. So yeah, there's like two types. There's the like, yeah, that's not right. I've maybe corrected you before and you did it again and I don't know what to do now. Or there's the like, really? Okay. And a lot of instances of misgendering for me can often be just sort of like passing comments. It doesn't change my conception of myself. It doesn't make me feel like I need to be doing anything different or anything like that. It's just like, I was called a woman again. That doesn't feel good to me because I'm not. And I like to be seen for who I am. And I often fear that my strict, like, distancing myself from womanhood and being a woman, I fear that comes off as misogynistic when that's really not the case. It's not because I'm like, women suck. It's like, I'm just not that. And I need you to understand that. Like now. So that's my quick little video on misgendering. If something resonated with you, leave a comment. If you have your own little story, leave a comment. If something I said seems a little like, oh, Iris, maybe you shouldn't have said that, leave a comment. And I will see you in the next one. I love you. I'm gonna play you a little song. If you haven't already seen my cover of I Ate Boys by Chloe Moriondo, go check it out. That's one of my favorite videos I've literally ever made. When I asked you if you liked Phoebe Bridgers and you laughed, you didn't know I was that sad. I was the fun you couldn't have. I was just fingers down your back. I've been doing a lot of gender content recently, and that's literally just because it's very easy for me to talk about with like no preparation, and it seems like it's been resonating. Hey, how's it going? My name is Iris, and I really like microphones and doing music and making videos, and I don't know even what I'm saying anymore.